9.2 focuses on biological resources. And these, simply put, are resources that involve bioproductivity or living things. We're first going to talk about whales and the whaling industry. Until 1868, primitive technology limited whaling, so that really whaling wasn't a bad practice. People would take only a certain number of whales and whale populations weren't harmed. However, modern technology changed that. With the invention of the modern harpoon gun, all of a sudden it became much easier to catch whales. And whale populations plunged during the 20th century. If you take a look at the graph that I put up here, in 1900, not too many whales were being caught. But notice with the harpoon gun, now we're catching a whole lot of whales until in about the 70s, all of a sudden, even with the same pressure or same effort going into catching whales, we were catching fewer and fewer. And the reason for that is because those whale populations were decreasing. So much so that we went from having 4.4 million whales in the ocean in 1900 to only 1 million today. In fact, today, 8 of the 11 great baleen whale species are commercially extinct, meaning there's no use in trying to fish for them or whale for them because you won't be able to catch them. This formed the International Whaling Commission, and they adopted a moratorium or a stop on all commercial whaling in 1986. Some species are recovering well, such as the gray whale, but others are still declining. So there's a lesson here that given the chance, some species can recover. However, if commercial pressure takes too long to stop, species may continue on to extinction. Now, whaling still does continue today because of 3 reasons. First of all, the International Whaling Commission is a voluntary organization, and nations do not need to be a member of it. Also, because of Aboriginal hunting, this would be like Native Americans engaging in they're allowed to hunt for particular whales, but they usually don't take too many to cause any problems. But the big problem we see is what we call scientific whaling. And if you look at the graph that I pulled up here, notice that since 1986, when this moratorium went into effect, the amount of scientific whaling went way up. And this is because nations such as Japan are saying that they're doing scientific whaling, but they're actually just taking whales for food. So they're using the guise of science to cover over their crimes. Now let's switch gears here and talk about algae as a biological resource. We may not think of algae as food, but you'll probably be surprised in a moment to realize that you actually consume algae. Seaweeds and algae make up 10% of the Japanese diet, and they're popular in sushi, such as what you see pictured there. Nori is the algae that is used to wrap certain sushis like California rolls and such. Also, there's a compound called algin that comes from the mucus that's found in kelp and other things, and this can be found in a number of food products that we eat, found in ice cream, such as this compound here. It's called carrageenan. You'll find that on your better ice creams that are nice and smooth and creamy, because this algin and carrageenan serves as an emulsifier of fats to help keep it nice and smooth. But you find it in salad dressing. It's also found in cosmetics and even in toothpaste. So every time you brush your teeth, you're consuming or using some algae. Now let's talk about farming the sea. This is known as aquaculture. So agriculture is farming the land, aquaculture is farming the sea. And it's basically using farming techniques to grow and harvest aquatic organisms. Mariculture specifically is a form of aquaculture that deals with the marine environment or occurs in salt water. And as we will learn about the fishing industry, it's getting harder and harder to catch fish out there in the ocean. So the growth trend in actually raising fish and shrimp in aquaculture facilities is growing by leaps and bounds. Since 1980, it's been really skyrocketing upwards as the technology in this industry has increased. Now, other biological resources may not relate to food, but actually to medicines. Bioprospecting is searching for organisms with some sort of pharmacological or medical benefit. And there's the potential that we've found some drugs that could help to combat viruses, inflammation or swelling, cancer, heart disease, HIV, among others. So you can see in this field, there's an awful lot of scuba diving going and collecting some interesting critters such as sponges, and even corals have medicinal value, and then processing those extracts to try to make medicines that can help people with certain diseases. Now we're going to start focusing on fisheries, and this is actually commercial fishing for food. Seafood accounts for only about 4% of what people eat, yet it's about 18% of the protein we get. So seafood is an essential source of protein globally. Common fishing methods or ways that we catch fish include gill nets, which are long nets that are deployed that float in the water and catch fish by their gills. We also have long lining, and this was made famous by the movie The Perfect Storm. They were long sword fishermen, and they were going after swordfish with long lines. These are more specific to catch bigger fish with these large hooks. Another method is called purse seining, where a boat deploys a net around a school of fish and then hauls the net up. And then we also have trawling, which is when a large net, and you can see in this picture the size of the net is as big as the space shuttle, so it's really big, is pulled behind a vessel and they capture fish and shrimp. This is commonly how shrimp are caught in our waters. Now let's talk a little bit about the economics behind the fishery industry. The fishing industry is an interesting little entity because there's actually no profits gained in fishing because it's just too expensive with the fuel and boat costs. There really should be no profit. However, the fishing industry survives because of global government subsidies. Subsidies commonly are also called buyouts. So there's grants and no interest loans, low cost fuel, other tax incentives that really take care of the overhead for the fishing industry so that it survives. You may ask, well, why do governments do this? Well, because fishing is so ingrained in our cultures that it employs millions and millions of people. So if the fishing industry were to collapse, then that we'd talk about loss of millions of jobs and destabilization of many local governments. So we need to keep our fisheries going, and that's why we do these subsidization. Now, another thing to talk about as far as economics goes is what's called the Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ. And this extends 370 kilometers, or 200 nautical miles, from the coastline of each government. So, and these are important because within the 200 nautical miles, the government has full control over what's going on in there. So, in other words, for example, Russia cannot come over and fish in our waters, nor can we go over to their exclusive economic zone of fish there without their permission. So anything beyond the 200 nautical mile EEZ is known as the open sea or the open ocean. There's no, that's the high seas, sometimes it's called, where no government can control that. Continuing on, let's talk about the trends in fisheries. According to the Food and Agricultural Organization, the worldwide annual catch has been increasing substantially since World War II. However, there's a problem with this. We need to realize that the FAO is a volunteer organization, so their statistics may not be accurate. In fact, independent analysis showed that the worldwide catch may have been increasing as FAO said, but local fisheries were decreasing as much as 10% in 1988. And you can see with this graph that it seems like the percent of worldwide fisheries is going down, and it's projected to continue a downward trend. And it's predicted that we soon will not be able to meet the rising demand for fish. So this will introduce our next series of notes. 9.3 is going to deal all with fisheries science. So we'll learn more about that in the next grouping of notes.